Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our monthly. We're never quite sure whether we call this a training or a sharing session anymore. It doesn't really matter, though. It's an opportunity for us to share time together and hear some meaningful insights around logotherapy and hopefully also to contribute some of our own. Tonight, Danielle is going to be talking to us about self-abandonment and return to the authentic self. These are terms that we hear bandied about quite a lot these days, but I'm really looking forward to hearing, Danielle, what you have to say about those terms, particularly in relation to logotherapy. I've known Danielle for a long time. She was actually one of my trainers way back in the day when I started my studies and the courses were still at the UNISA. It's wonderful to still have her with us and the wonderful contribution she makes to the Institute and to our students. And looking forward to what you have to say tonight, Danielle. So welcome and over to you.
Thank you, Mark, for the lovely introduction. It's lovely to be here. I was trying to think of a topic, but this self-abandonment seems to be coming up a lot. And also with my clients as well. There's quite a lot of it seems to become popping up a lot. And also I wanted it to be a little bit of a prelude to Pan's presentation that she'll be doing next month, because she'll be giving a very personal account, and I think that they go quite well together. So I hope, yeah, it would be. Hmm, that was- Hello, Panda. Hello. I was just nice to see you.
Pleased to see you. I'm sorry I came late. Hello, everyone. I'm so sorry to disturb you by coming late, but I'm happy to be here.
We're happy for you to be here, Dr. Kanda. Hi.
And
Hi,
Mark,
thanks.
yeah. Lovely to have you here. I was just introducing the topic. Mark introduced me already, and I was just saying that the topic that I chose, it's a prelude to Pan's account, well, Pan's topic that she'll be doing next month. I thought that they went quite nicely because she'll be giving quite a personal account as well. And it's been a subject that comes up a lot in my therapy sessions and a word that I've been hearing. So I thought, let's do this topic today. I think that a lot of people can relate to it and will be able to, it will be something that might come up in therapy sessions. So I've prepared a presentation, which I will start with, but you're welcome to engage. If you like, I can complete the presentation and then I'll open it up for discussion. If there's something pressing that you want to add in at any point, that's also fine. Otherwise, I'll go through it and then I'd love for us to have a discussion about the topic, because I feel like that's where a lot of the, learning takes place as well. So I will start with my presentation. Self-abandonment and the return to the authentic self. We call it the quiet epidemic of the highly functional. So self-abandonment really looks dramatic. We may appear entirely capable, responsible, successful, and sometimes even caring, while having quietly drifted away from ourselves. We offer acceptable, adapted, and functional versions of who we are, but not of our fullest selves. So it's often socially rewarded to be the high achiever, the agreeable one, the strong one. But internally, there might be feelings of being disconnected, numbness, exhaustion, and quiet anxiety. Adaptation as a survival strategy. So self-abandonment is the repeated act of disconnecting from one's inner truth to maintain attachment, approval, safety, belonging, it usually develops very early when we learn that certain parts of ourselves are not welcome. So the external demand, emotions are too much, and sensitivity is often criticized. And then we may ask ourselves, which part must remain hidden? Who do I need to become in order to be loved? And which parts of me are acceptable? So this doesn't always happen on a conscious level. I think at some point it does early on, where we make decisions about how we're going to be. But eventually it kind of becomes a way of being in the world. Um, and there might be situations where one would consciously think of it. But mostly it's kind of like a way, it's just a way of being in the world. Like I say, it usually starts in childhood, but there can be circumstances that one may go through as well in life, later in life, that can also cause this kind of self-abandonment, although there's usually some kind of predisposition there already. So the feedback loop of disconnection, the trigger, the core needs or authentic emotions arise, but threaten external connection. Then the calculation, the internal negotiation. What do I need to be in this environment? The action, we hide the authentic self, present the adapted, acceptable version. And this may offer some kind of social reward, sometimes not even reward, but just a way of survival, in the worst case scenarios. But this creates an internal void. There's often feelings of exhaustion, resentment, emptiness. So this is just a little, these are a little table of possible forms of self-abandonment. There are obviously others, but the most obvious ones would be people-pleasing, silencing one's intuition, rollover identification, emotional suppression. And, the external presentation of these and the internal reality are quite different. And also, there's always something that's forfeited. So, for example, with people-pleasing, the person may present as relationally successful, accommodating, but internally feeling invisible and shape-shifting. What is forfeited then might be authentic connection. So, then the authentic connection might be forfeited, silencing one's intuition. We may become agreeable and compliant. There'd be a loss of self-trust and direction, and we might forfeit our conscience or our inner orientation. Another one is roll-over identification, where we're the dependable and heroic one, reduced only to a function, and we forfeit spontaneity and individuality. And then there's emotional suppression, where we be composed, unbothered, possibly, feeling anxious, burnt out, and tense, and forfeiting our emotional truth and our wholeness. So we might jam the organ of meaning. For intuition, sometimes it's a quiet inner knowing, although it can come through in other ways as well. In logotherapy, we speak about conscience, and it's understood as the organ of meaning, an internal compass orienting us towards what is valuable and right in a specific moment. If we repeatedly override this in order to survive or be accepted, it destroys our self-trust. And I think to some extent, we sometimes aren't always taught from a very young age to follow our intuition. Oftentimes as children, we kind of not attuned to our bodies. We are naturally attuned to our bodies and our the things that come through for us intuitively, but sometimes we aren't allowed to express those things, or we suppress them because we don't know what to do with them, or we haven't been taught. So oftentimes this can be an adaptive way of doing things. This self-abandonment at the worst can come from things like trauma and abuse. However, it can also come from just upbringing, like just the way that life is modeled for you. For example, you have a parent or a tradition that says that, women don't really speak their mind. They're always helping. If they're not helping, then there's something, they need to be doing something and helping all the time or being a certain way. So it can be something, it can really just be well-meaning parents and just coming from a normal, nothing serious in terms of upbringing that can create the self-abandonment. It's quite a common thing. Obviously, the more severe type is when it's through trauma and even emotional suppression, that kind of thing. So now there'll be expectations, fear of disappointment, a need for approval, and then also maintenance of attachment being a big one. So this is what the fragmented self would look like. The authentic self is one that is congruent, where our authentic self and our presented self are the same. Then there's the splitting, where the world receives a carefully managed version, the fuller version remaining unexpressed. And sometimes it leads to existential emptiness and anxiety, where we are unknown even to ourselves. So differentiating between adaptation and abandonment. So there is a healthy adaptation. There's many times where all the time we have to adapt. We sometimes have to concede. We don't always, it's not always right to speak up or to express ourselves in our full potential. There are moments where we put others first, but this is context dependent and flexible. And it's not just about putting others first, not at all. If it's a proper, a healthy adaptation, then it's flexible. And it preserves our core values. Our values are not compromised. It's usually a conscious, deliberate choice. And we still maintain our internal connection. Whereas with self-abandonment, we're talking about something that's quite rigid. It overrides our core values. It's often fear and survival driven and results in internal fragmentation and can result in internal fragmentation and numbness. So bringing logotherapy into it, of course, there's a paradigm shift. So the standard model, as we know, is usually the psychological and the biological dimension. It's viewed as these seeking some kind of homeostasis. Whereas with logotherapy, we look at meaning, freedom, authenticity, and we have the noetic dimension, which makes up the entirety of the human being. And in this dimension is where our freedom lies in order to deal with these kind of things and these kind of adaptations that aren't serving us. The irreducible uniqueness. So the noetic dimension, as we know, is the spiritual core. It cannot be reduced to circumstance, conditioning, or pathology. When we abandon ourselves, we obscure our unique capacities and we default to living from fear rather than vocation or responsibility or calling. So our core is where our conscience, our intuition is, our values and our creativity, freedom, responsibility, and of course, our will to meaning. So our aim as logotherapists would be to illuminate this part of the individual and this freedom that remains. In spite of feelings of people, self-abandonment issues such as people pleasing and that kind of thing, whatever it is that we're dealing with. I can't see myself anymore, so it's a bit weird. I'm like just talking to the screen. Anyway, hopefully everyone can still hear me and see me and everything.
We do. We can still follow you and hear you with the beautiful slide.
Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you. So healing is not becoming someone else. This is very important. Healing, self-abandonment is not about becoming selfish or rejecting relationships. And our responsibilities. That's not what we teach in logotherapy. Logotherapy is not about self all about the self and the me, and it's about responsibility. So it's not about rejecting what we have and being there for the people in our lives and having giving of ourselves to something. It's about returning to inner alignment. When I spoke about the authentic self and the presenting self, obviously that's not always possible in certain circumstances, but that in general, who we present to the world is really in line with our authenticity. So it's a process of making those adapted shells transparent so we can connect to our healthy core. So those adapted shells, it's not necessarily always about digging into the past, although that is very helpful for a lot of people, especially with deep-seated traumas that need to be expressed. However, even in situations where one cannot remember where it comes from or doesn't want to, we have to look at how it's presented and what are we presenting in the context of our everyday lives, whether it be people pleasing or over identification with roles or suppressing our emotions or whatever it may be. So we have to become aware of these fragments, and when we can become aware of those things, then we can still, in spite of those fragments, we can still choose to connect to our healthy core and find a way. By identifying them, that already gives a sense of empowerment, if you want to call it that. I don't know if it's the right word. So 360-degree reorientation of the self. These are just some ideas of how we would reorientate ourselves towards, when I talk about the self, obviously I'm talking about the full human being as discussed. So we want to reorientate ourselves in a way that we are embracing our entirety, our noetic core. So we can listen inwardly, so recognizing emotional truth, honor our intuition. And, I also feel that listening to our bodies is also part of intuition. Oftentimes we aren't taught as young people as well. And sometimes, we're not taught to listen to what our bodies are telling us because, and it's because, having these little people with very big emotions can be quite challenging for parents because, we're adults, you're past that. And oftentimes children feel things in their bodies. They recognize things within their bodies, but then they're taught to kind of just push it down. And we're taught to kind of suppress it, so we don't learn to develop the intuition that can even come through as messages in our bodies and through into our, noetic dimension. Through into our conscience, we can really pick up on things there as well. So listening inwardly also includes listening to our entire being, to our bodies. What are we feeling? What is this telling us? And also the little messages that we get, obviously, from our conscience, the inner voice. And then tolerate authenticity, so reclaiming creativity, which is obviously our creative values. Creativity in any way, our creative value, things that we give to the world, what we can still do in spite of feelings of self-abandonment, and live congruently, even when it's uncomfortable. And that will be uncomfortable for somebody who has abandoned themselves and suppressed themselves for such a long time that when they actually do something different or they choose to listen to their conscience or be brave in spite of it, it can be rather uncomfortable. And sometimes, they might go into feelings of guilt for having said no or for having whatever it may be that they're struggling with. So you have to learn how to be, you have to learn how to be comfortable with discomfort, or to learn how to live with discomfort and move through it. Another thing that oftentimes we're not really taught, or society doesn't really allow us space for. And then reconnecting with values. So let our conscience, not expectation, dictate action. And then in some cases, developing boundaries. So to protect our core from demands that force fragmentation. So such as just the ability to possibly say no if something's not going to be, if something's going to be harmful, or cause this kind of fragmentation. So depending on what that may be. And then the pull of meaning. So human beings, as we know, are not primarily driven by pleasure or power, but by the will to meaning. So meaning pulls the individual beyond mere adaptation and asks something of us, calling us into responsibility towards our unique life. Self-abandonment occurs when we stop responding to that deeper call. So that happens, gradually, oftentimes. So now the pleasure power adaptation towards meaning. Oftentimes, just being courageous, just even looking at how clients have been shown courage in difficult situations in spite of having to deal with difficult things or feeling insecure, whatever it may be. If we can point out those things, there's always examples of that as well. And that also gives us an example of the noetic dimension and how we can still make decisions and still do difficult things in spite of these kind of adaptations that we have. And then asking the right question. So even after years of having to adapt and disconnect, there remains within a person a core that longs towards wholeness, or I could rather say meaning. And healing begins the moment that we change the question that we ask ourselves. And I think this is a really nice question for somebody who has abandoned themselves and has identified themselves with this. No longer who do I need to be in order to belong, but rather what would it mean in this moment to stop abandoning myself and not to abandon myself? What would be the responsible thing to do? Not, what do I need to be in order to belong? So that's a really nice question. Let me see if it's the end. Yes, it is. That is the end of the presentation. So I would love it if we could have a conversation about this. Anybody that wants to share or give a response, I would love to hear your thoughts.
Thank you, Danielle.
Thanks.
That's such a great presentation, and your slides really have set it out so very clearly. It was really so easy to follow. But as always happens, in the moment of illumination, there are always more questions that come up. I have a question that I'm battling with a little this aspect with a client, and I hope I can put this clearly enough. So when we talk about abandoning ourselves, we're talking about abandoning our core values. Now, but our values are formed when we are young by our society, right? Our community, the society we're in, the parents we have, the schools we go to, the religions we follow, etc., etc. So as we grow up and realize that our intrinsic values do not necessarily align with the values which we have acquired through being taught, but do not necessarily reflect who we are, that is not really an abandoning of self, right? It's not even a return to self because you haven't had those values. And that then becomes a discovery of self later in life. Right? Am I correct?
Yes, I would think so. I believe that, self-abandonment is kind of like a way of being. There's this internal, it's like an internal struggle where you feel constantly like you want to do something, or your conscience is calling you to do something, yet you've been so used to people pleasing and to putting, not wanting to be heard, or you've been so used to having a certain role that you don't want to forfeit that, or needing to be, you've put aside. It's a process
Mm.
of, it's not actually really a very conscious
Yeah.
choice that one makes. It's a way of being. Yeah.
Do you think?
So I would say that in itself, yeah, if it's just related to one's core values, and there is, um, it's very difficult for somebody who has abandoned themselves to be able to break through and to even realize that they're doing that. So I don't know if that resonates, or
Yeah,
if it's answered your.
it does, but again, it opens more questions
Yes.
because so if we're looking at values as some things
Mhm.
that are in some ways imposed upon us when we are young,
Yeah.
and the conscience as the intuitive organ of meaning,
Yeah.
um, it's almost at which point does that conscious start to kick in and tell us that the values we are following are not necessarily our authentic values? I'm wondering if that manifests itself in the kind of, and maybe is even part of the process that we go through as teenagers, what we talk about as discovering ourselves, where we all over the place because there's a discomfort and an unhealthy tension
Yes.
between the values that we've been taught, which we think we should adhere to, but our conscience telling us that actually a lot of those values are not who we authentically are. And we have
Yes.
to solve that conflict, I think, somewhere in that space of growing up. So one of the reasons I'm asking is I have a client who had very specific values which were imposed upon her by a very dominant and to some extent abusive mother in childhood. She's now in her 60s and is battling to find who she is
Mm.
in the world now. She's gone through it. She lost her husband, and that gave her a
Mm.
sense of belonging. And so she is now asking that question that you said, who do I have to be in order to belong? She's not able to go to say, what was the alternative question you said? Who do I, if I,
What do I have to do to stop abandoning myself, or to,
right, what do
yeah,
I have to do to stop abandoning myself? But she doesn't yet know who that self is, even at the
yes,
age of in her early 60s, because she'd become so attached to the values that were uh, imposed upon her by her mother, but which she's always known didn't sit right with her, but she's never really created an identity for herself.
yes, yeah. And I think, sometimes, yes, we know ourselves, but in different situations, we discover different things about ourselves as we go through life. But it's almost like reconnecting to, finding ways to reconnect to her, I think even physically in the
Mm.
body.
Mm.
There's a lot that we can learn intuitively, and also just spontaneously. Who is she? That can also give clues as to, who is she spontaneously when when something happens, or in relationship to others, that kind of thing. It's really difficult. Yes. It's
Yeah.
not an easy process.
In this case, she's also
Yeah.
been taught to mistrust her instinct because her mother told her as a young child that who she is too loud, too noisy, too much, So
Mm.
she's kind of been made to think that what instinctively feels authentic to her is not right.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. And
so
that's one of
thank
those.
you. This presentation has given me a lot of to think about and help with this
Yeah,
situation.
that's a real challenge, Mark, to try to distinguish sometimes between, and try to quieten those kind of voices and distinguish between our super ego and the conscience, and to, in a sense, all those kind of voices. And it's quite challenging to make that distinction. But it is, I mean, it's a process. Yeah.
It's almost in this case as she has to abandon, not so much, she doesn't have to abandon the authentic self, she has to abandon the imposed set of values, which has kind of created who she is in order to discover the authentic self at this late stage in life.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And
Thanks.
I guess also another way is, through engaging with life, just being present and engaging with life and being open in a sense to what's around you and learning about who you are in that way, in that peaceful, taking those moments for oneself, through creative. We go back to creative values, experiential values, and that kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Danielle.
Oh, hello,
Thank
Helen.
you, Danielle.
Lovely to hear from you. Yes.
Thank you for the presentation. You've really got me thinking, and I'm writing a lot of notes, just thinking about my own clients, like Mark was just thinking about his client. And it's not really a question, maybe just an observation from my experience, is that, if I have clients that have a tendency to be people pleasers or, competitive achievers, very high achievers, I find that this sort of repeated abandonment or disconnection from one's inner truth, as you described it, is tough as it is. So you arrive in a job and you're a people pleaser. And then you get given a specific role. Perhaps it's a very senior role in the organization. And there's again an incongruence between who you are naturally and what the role is demanding and asking of you to be, and the expectation that others have of you of that role, and what the business is asking of you as well. So I see that almost as a double whammy, so to speak, because you're arriving as a high achiever, and you've learned as a child that I have to achieve and excel and do well and hide parts of myself in order to be loved and accepted. And so I have to hide those things as well in the workplace when I show up. And then the role on top of that now demands me to be someone different. And, sometimes I find with my clients, they are so disconnected from this authentic self that perhaps they've completely lost their selves in that moment. And there's a hardening, I think, that shows up. And I see it in terms of illness, absenteeism, headaches, just becoming someone they're not, kind of sort of not recognizing who they are. And so this is just amazing for me because I didn't think about it from a logotherapy perspective, because I'm only sort of, fairly new on this journey. But now that when you spoke about the 4 ways to bring you back to your noetic self, so listen inwardly, tolerate authenticity, develop boundaries, and reconnect with our values, it's given me something tangible to now take back into the coaching space, which is like another layer. So just, thank you for that.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, those are just some nice examples, absolutely. But I think it's just the focusing to try to reorientate the focus away from towards it's towards meaning and towards kind of values and looking beyond just what is kind of expected of me. Obviously, in some instances in the job space, obviously there's certain responsibilities that one has to do that are part and parcel. But if they can reorientate themselves, towards meaning and looking at those 4 elements, it could make a difference. Absolutely. Thank you. That's great. Great insight from you. Thank you.
Thanks, Danielle.
Yeah, dear Danielle, thank you very much for a very thoughtful presentation. It's very, very beautiful. I really loved the slide and the images which transmitted your message as well. I thought, following Mark and Ellen questions and comment, I thought another aspect to look at, and I'm sure you are aware about it, and I'm actually looking forward to pen presentation as well. The relationship between self-abandonment and suffering, deep suffering. Many of us, or many of our clients who have abandoned who they are and stop to be authentic, has been abused and come from a space of suffering, which calls for courage to face that suffering.
Yeah.
So it's almost like running away from oneself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that is another aspect to look at.
Mm-hmm.
What are we scared of? We are scared of the pain and suffering we went through for many years in the past. So it is an aspect to look at. And I love something you said about the healing starting with the type of questions. This reminds me, Ellen, a question in the last session we had. Yes, the question we ask are very critical. We have to be very, very critical. Not critical, very mindful, meaning oriented
Mm.
with the kind of question we are asking, because the question themselves can be misleading. Otherwise, thanks again for a beautiful presentation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for raising that. It's so important. Yes. And it, I was actually thinking that this kind of self-abandonment also makes people very susceptible to abuse, to being taken advantage of and to abuse. And it's quite difficult then to break out of that pattern because for an abusive individual, they're quite apparent, they can spot them. They can spot them. So people will take advantage. And it is a kind of suffering. Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that. That's, very valuable. Thank you, Kanda. I saw that Jackie had her mic off.
Oh, yes, thank
I
you.
mean, her
Just switched it
mic
on.
on.
My mic on and my video off. Lovely to see everyone after a wee while. I'm wondering about self-abandonment and how it's leading to a lot of clients outsourcing the problem and to machines now, to AI.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that I don't think we can lose sight of because they are very keen to now bring the AI into the therapy room and to focus on something or someone other than themselves. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are. Thank you for a wonderful presentation. But I think that if people are going to prioritize chatbots, etc., over their own inner voices, because they feel the benefits are immediate and novel and convenient. I'm just curious how it's going to impact on our logotherapeutic work that we are so privileged to be part of.
Yes, yes. I'm sure that it is going to impact our work to some extent. However, I mean, I think there probably might be a place for that, not to say that it should, if it becomes a crutch, I suppose it's a different story. But it can be help, we can use AI to work out certain things and help to translate certain things. So it just depends on obviously who's using it, and for what purposes. Yeah. If it becomes a crutch and it's replacing the human element, if you want to call it that. And however, I think that it actually it can be helpful for some that maybe don't have, that don't have access or to a person, I guess, or to somebody, or so there is definitely maybe a place for it, but yeah. I'm not sure. You say bringing it into the therapy room. So in other words, taking over in a sense, the actual one-on-one therapy.
Yeah, just being able to acknowledge it. Because I agree with you. I think for many people, the development of skills and tools would be advantageous, because many people are unable to have therapy per se.
Yes.
And the danger is that there is a possibility that it will be abused. And we know that these companies are there to make billions. They're not there to heal.
Yeah.
And certainly I found amongst young people who use it now. I had a young client who came trying to recover from a drug addiction and was using AI to get more information about drugs. Well, of course, the machine didn't know that he was a recovering addict.
Yes, of course.
And
No, there's a lot of
the
pitfalls.
worse
Absolutely.
than the problem. But fortunately, he was able to bring it into therapy and understand what the purpose and meaning was behind it all.
Yeah,
So
sure.
I think, it's going forward, I'm sure that we'll have to work with it in the...
Yeah, it's a scary world. It's quite a scary world we live in, you know, in a sense. Sorry,
But thank you.
Yes,
Thank
if I
you.
may say,
I'm sorry. Yes.
I
Carry
may
on.
say, dear Jackie, thank you very much for
Yeah.
bringing that important aspect, so the AI. But as you were talking, what came into my mind first of all is something Danielle mentioned: responsibility.
Mm.
So the way we use AI sometimes, and people might use AI to run away from our own decision-making responsibility and rely on the AI to, okay, if should I go for holidays or not this season or things like that,
No.
and AI would decide for me. So it takes away from us, and some of us might feel better because we don't. Yeah, it's not my decision. AI thinks better than me. But anyway, it would
No,
lead.
but
Yeah.
AI can have some knowledge, but it's not going to understand
Yes, yeah,
the person. So there's no
yeah,
understanding. It's a
yeah,
machine, and it's
yes,
there to make billions and billions
yeah.
for the
But yes,
companies. They're not
yes,
interested in health and
mm,
healing and meaning.
yeah.
Mm.
But
So,
unfortunately, we have supported that as well, because I don't know. Yeah, I'm sure you know it better than me. At some point, there've been psychologists who said just writing about yourself, it's healing. And they, in some university, they even put up computers. People would just go write about themselves there, and so I'm sure then now they can even AI to do that. But
yes.
I always say it's a very dangerous space, because, as you are saying, the noetic dimension is not always there. So a good friend of mine I've met recently who is into, because I'm not. I generally say I was born BC, meaning I was born before computer. So
Me too.
I don't know, but
I'm there with you, Kanda.
yeah. So well, when I talked to him about AI, he said no, he does use AI. What he has realized is what Daniel says. The most important thing is the type of question you bring to AI, and
Yes.
what do you want to use with it.
Mm. Yeah.
So it is an important aspect which we need to think more and more as logotherapists, because it will definitely come into
Yes.
our space.
No, I'm sure it'll have many advantages, and certainly for report writing and things, it can be very advantageous. But I'm just thinking of the self-abandonment and listening to your own inner voice and expecting an instantaneous feeling of gratification, because the machine will just affirm what you want to hear. So in logotherapy, you're not affirming what everybody wants to hear. You're also offering some therapeutic skills and devices. So we have to focus on it as well, and not abandon our true logotherapeutic potential.
Yes, thank you. It's a very important point that you brought up, and it's also very current. I mean, this is the world we're living in now, and that it's a completely new generation. I mean, I see it with my daughter who's 9 years old, and my goodness, it's like just a completely, I was born, I mean, I also only had a cell phone when I finished school, and so I was kind of, I went through my whole childhood and everything without any technology. And so I was kind of, an adolescent when all of this kind of came in. So
Thank you.
it is kind of scary, but I think exactly what Kanda says, it's about, it can be anything, can be used as a great tool, or it can be used it depends how it's used and what kind of, if we're looking at people that have got addictions or are not really, and if we're looking at people that aren't connected to themselves and connected to their healthy core and have that connection, that discernment, then it can be really dangerous. But like, for example, Pan next month will be doing a presentation on how AI has actually helped her, which is going to be so interesting. But in her case, we're talking about a person who is deeply connected to her healthy core and her spiritual core, and is using it as a way to discover and understand, certain aspects of herself with discernment. So, it's a very important topic to talk about, and I think we're going to have more and more discussions on it. But yes, it should never replace the conscience. If you, like any material, I guess, that you read, if you have a sense of discernment and a sense of being connected to yourself, you can decide about the information that is generated. But thanks for sharing that experience. I think we're going to have lots of that kind of coming up in therapy.
May I come in?
Yes, please.
Hi. Sorry, my audio, my lighting is not good, so it's very dark, so I don't have my audio, my video on. But I'd like to just give a view on AI counseling that we came across. We do online counseling, and we have a young client, a teenager, and she had, while talking to us, she had also been talking to AI, and she happened to share the context. She sent the context of her conversations with AI, and it was very supportive of her. It actually counseled her very well. Yeah. So it's not all bad out there. And although she knew that it was a machine, she actually felt more heard and more cared for, in brackets, by AI than by her family.
Yeah.
Even knowing that it was an AI bot.
That's amazing. I mean, even I think even in Pan's instance, where she'll share next month, I'm not going to take away from that, but I think she had if I may say, Pan, a similar experience. So again, if it's used in the correct way, it actually can come through as quite supportive. Yes. It definitely can.
What about, may I just comment, what about the adolescent who want affirmation about them taking their lives and committing suicide and being affirmed and given yes? So I think it's a very fine line.
Can I come in there?
It is totally. Yeah.
Jackie, have you had an incident of that being affirmed?
No, not in my personal.
Okay. So
research reviews have started bringing it to my attention.
Okay. So my experience is that it's actually programmed that when you write in something about suicide or whatever, it actually sends through a window, a thing on a suicide line, crisis line. So,
yes, I think that's recent. Originally, it wasn't part of their programming. So it would be very different to SADC, for instance, that would come on board and offer some assistance. So I think that's quite a recent development.
May I say something?
Yeah.
I'm not, as I said, I'm born BC. The issue is, Lynn, as you reported the case of the young, the youngster who used AI. Well, what came to my mind was a book. Some of us have also read books where you literally have a logo moment reading the book. You have a logo moment. But we have also read books which drops you into a deep end. So the main issue, as you are saying, I'm suspecting that I'm saying this, we are going to need more discussion and having experts around AI, because it's a program, and it's a program made up by someone. Now, that person covers everything, and how does it control everyone? Because anyway, let me end with a joke. For me, I take it as a joke, is that now we are asking the machine, the machine is asking us to prove if I'm a human being. Have you realized that? I'm on my desktop at work. I want to access a document, and the machine asks me, are you a human being or a robot?
Yes.
As a human being, I have to prove to the machine that I'm a human being. So how far can we trust the AI and the people who come up with the program? I'm sure many of them have got good intention, like people who write books have got good intention, but some might be doing that as well at a space of a crisis and mislead people. So maybe we need to think more about, because definitely our new generation of logotherapists are going to have clients dealing with that, and it's important. Yeah, because I'm imagining a logotherapist coming to say, okay, I'm going to design a AI program, meaning oriented, to conduct session. It's possible. So, yes.
I think we have a particular challenge, though, in logotherapy, because we work so much with the spiritual dimension. And I think it's a question that we also find in the arts. There's this big question, will AI ever be able to replicate the human spirit? And, there are lots of experiments going on with musicians and visual artists and things, creating projects and challenging people to say, are you able to tell that this piece of art has been created by a machine? In other words, are you able to say that you do not detect something of the human spirit in this work? Now, interestingly, when AI first came out about 3 years ago, I mean, when ChatGPT was, and somebody who worked in the field offered me a program and just said, ask it all kinds of questions for a couple of weeks. And one of the first questions I asked was, can you be a logotherapist? And AI said, no, I can't, because logotherapy deals with the noetic dimension, and I am not it ain't saying that anymore. You ask now if it can be a logotherapist, and it's saying unequivocally, yes, I can be. And even, I think so. I think this is it. And we've been talking a lot about this. We had several sessions, in fact, last year at our supervisors meetings at the Institute. We got into this topic, and we'd only really got as far as, I think, what we're all saying this evening is that potentially it is useful, and it all comes down to the responsibility of how we use it. But I think it is a massive, massive topic. And I think maybe even more so for us than who are logotherapists than in some other forms of therapy. So it's definitely something we're going to have to revisit. And I think, Dr. Kanda, you're right. We need to get some real experts in there. Too many of us here who are BCs.
Can I just respond to Dr. Kanda a bit? I see is he here?
Mhm.
Sorry, can I have the floor, Danielle?
Yes.
Yes,
So,
I can hear you. I'm following you.
oh, there we go. In response to you saying that, people are creating these programs, there's at least one site I know of that is a robot site, whatever you want to call it. And people logging in know that they are talking to AI in a therapeutic situation. So it's already out there. It's already happening.
Yeah.
And I just also mentioned something. What's interesting is, I think, like everything in life, I mean, this is a challenge, but we need to take it with a pinch of salt as well, because I'm also a BC. But when television came out, they said, oh gosh, the children sitting in front of the TV, blah, 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 and that was a problem. Then computers came out, then access to the web came out, then cell phones came out, then access to the deep web and things like that come. So there's always going to be an issue. There's always going to be a new development. And I think one should always just be prepared for that and know it, and also think back on our own lives and say, well, I was able to make choices. I didn't become a murderer because I watched dramas and thrillers and things, horror movies. So there's always just a pinch of salt with anything.
Yeah, you know what they say, let the buyer beware.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I think where I would be more concerned is, what are the protocols? I mean, they're talking about it a lot, them doing a lot of research on, and there's not a lot of laws in place for AI yet. So I think one of the concerns is just that certain protocols must be in place to guide the person.
Mm-hmm.
I think when it becomes really dangerous is when you have delusional people that communicate with AI, and then this attributes to the delusion, and they can't determine if it's reality or it becomes a reality. Then there's another flip side when it comes to older people that are lonely. AI for older people and lonely people with Alzheimer's and early onset, can be a very helpful and comforting tool to reach out to. So there's always the good with the bad, like everything in life. There's a little good with the bad, little bad with the good.
No, thank you for that. Absolutely, Jean. And I think, we have to also realize that we're constantly moving, and what seemed really scary for us, when we were young, is now, we've learned how to kind of work with it. But yeah, it is I think it's very daunting for a lot of us BCers, and also in the, as logotherapists and therapists. But I think it's also very new, it's current, and I mean, it's going to continue developing, but it's there's going to be a lot of discussion around it. But thank you for bringing that up. Absolutely. I think that anything can be used in either way. Absolutely. I don't know if you wanted to say something, Sam. I see that your mic is off.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Danielle. And I'm so sorry I just entered the conversation late, so I'm definitely going to catch the recording of your presentation. But the conversation is just so fascinating, and so many different perspectives on self-abandonment and AI as a social shifting mechanism that we're all faced with. And just coming to mind is the idea that human beings have had to evolve over the millennia. And it's what the last lady was saying. I think was it Jean? But
Jean.
yes, but others have made good comments. I feel like as we as humans have evolved over millennia, we've always, let's say each epoch or each generation has had to face some or other kind of social shifting mechanism. And in our case, it's most certainly AI and the availability of information. So I just feel like as being in the helping profession, people will find us wherever they are on the spectrum in this, whatever they're facing. And so as a helper, as a people helper, I'm excited at the idea that we can have faith in the human being, because ultimately, whatever is impacting their life, wherever they're getting their information from, be it books, be it, then someone mentioned TV, and then it was the internet, and wherever we're getting our information from, we have a built-in ability to sort of a God-given ability to search for truth and to discover meaning in whatever aspects of our lives. And I really feel like we can be excited about that. It's the whole pinch of salt thing. I like that analogy, looking at it from that perspective, that we can be excited for people because somehow we are building in this sensitivity, this this awareness, this caution, maybe, oh, there's so much out there now. We have a wisdom within us. And I think just as people, if we can just encourage people around us, just, trust that wisdom, go with that wisdom. But then, of course, when it comes to self-abandonment, you've got the issue of, what does that wisdom look like? What does it look like to me? And hopefully that's where AI falls flat on its face and they come searching for the human connection, because that's where the magic happens. And but fascinating conversation. Thanks so much for allowing me to be a part of it.
That was so insightful. And I definitely think, the key here is that our primary motivation is towards meaning, and that the conscience is always there. It's always there. Sometimes it's quiet, we can't hear it. Or, I don't know if any of you have ever gone through times in your life where you actually didn't hear your conscience, and then one day you hear it and you're like, oh my gosh, where have you been? And I remember going through something like that in my my late teen years, where I was in a specific situation and all of a sudden I heard this conscience, and I was like, oh my goodness, I have not heard this conscience for some time. And then I started to listen to my conscience again and started to listen to that inner voice, and it became more prominent. So it's always going to be there, and life is always going to be there, calling us out, offering us opportunities to draw us out of ourselves and to engage with life and discover meaning. And so that's what it's all about, So thank you for bringing that point. What a beautiful insight. So nice to have you here, all of you. Okay.
If I may, just as a way of saying bye-bye, the question I'm asking, I'm saying that your topic is about self-abandonment. So if I'm correct, I believe self-abandonment lead us to disconnection with other human beings.
Yes.
Yeah. So are we willing to say one way of treating self-abandonment is to encourage people to connect with their machine, with their AI? So we can imagine all of us, I don't care about all of you, as long as I have my machine, I can connect to my machine and have all the answer and all the guidance? That's the question I'm asking.
No.
No.
I think so. Can I say so? I think
Yes.
that who was it? Who said this is where the magic lives? I think that's the answer. And Danielle followed that up with, reconnecting with the conscience when one was aware that it had been absent for some time, and how amazing that felt. And I think in the modern world, like everybody else, we're going to be fighting for our survival, and that's a lot about PR and marketing. And I'm just thinking that now that, multi-choice is going down, perhaps we should adopt that slogan ourselves. This is where the magic lies, in the human connection, in those aspects of ourselves which lie in the spiritual dimension. And yes, AI can be of a great help to you on multiple levels, but when you want the real magic, you've got to come to us.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's beautiful. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mark.
Is there anyone else like to say anything? We're a little over time. Thank you. I think we're going to find more and more that no matter what topic we start with, we somehow going to come around to the AI question, because it's so pertinent to just, to everything in all aspects of life at the moment. So it's a fascinating discussion, and it's wonderful that Pan is going to be looking directly at this and sharing some of her wonderful insights with us next month. So it'd be great if we could try and be here for Pan's presentation next month. And also please encourage and invite other people to come along too. I think it's going to be a most meaningful discussion. Thank you so much, Danielle, and thank you to everyone for the participation. This is really what we want these sessions to be about, lively discussions and questions and debate. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a
Mark,
wonderful...
I'd also like, Mark, just for
Yes.
interest sake, I just want to say I really enjoyed this meeting, Danny. Thank you. But what I enjoyed even more is the fact that we actually looked at, I have a patient, not revealing who the patient and what, but actual discussions of actual problems. That was very encouraging to me. I loved it.
Yeah, certainly very helpful.
Thank you, Sean. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Wonderful.
Thank you.